right, thank you, everybody. Hello, everyone. Once again, the famous QR code for Q&A, in case anybody needs it. It'll be up at the very end of the presentation as well. In my first year at uni, I attended my very first hackathon. And by that point in time, my experience with programming languages had been a bit of high school Java, as well as a touch of MySpace HTML. And at this hackathon, they offered a mini lecture to go over REST APIs and JSON. So as I sat in this lecture, it felt like a whole bunch of random words were jumping out at me, and I was struggling to make sense of how everything came together. They were talking about nested objects and how great JSON is and how wonderfully the data is structured, but it's also lightweight, and you can click on this thing here and look at more objects, and yeah, you just use an API. But I had no idea what I was meant to do the moment that I walked out of that room. What was I meant to do when joining a group at this hackathon and start making use of the APIs that were made available to us for that event? And I was doing all this mental gymnastics and feeling really inadequate in that moment. But what I came to realize was that nobody else in the audience understood exactly what was going on. And this was a bit of a relief for me. And what I came to learn is that even a room full of technical people sometimes have no idea what is going on. Fast forward to 2017, I'm working for a mid-sized company. I'm developing and supporting e-commerce websites. And my mom gets me a book that had just come out. It's written by software developer Alan Ullman, and it's a collection of personal essays. So this book is a memoir. And in this memoir, Alan Ullman takes us back to 1995. She helps two of her clients get set up to use the internet for the very first time. So these two clients are sitting at their desks, and they spend about an hour surfing the web. And after this hour, they make an attempt to convey their respective experiences. But in doing so, language fails them. One declares that they saw a link, and the other counters that they saw or clicked on a picture. One thinks that they saw City Hall, and when the other responds with having seen the library, they double down on City Hall. So neither of these two individuals are able to calibrate. Neither of them are able to fully make sense of this brand new interaction paradigm that they had just experienced. And I like this story so much because it highlights how challenging it is to articulate an entire interaction paradigm, especially when that interaction paradigm is entirely novel. And this is something that I think affects the technical user just as much as the layperson. A user becomes technical when they gain extensive knowledge in a particular set of tools or products that are relevant to their industry. And at some point in time, a technical user may experience a need or even a mandate to switch to a new set of tools. And when this happens, there's a bit of undoing that is required. A photographer that switches to a new camera manufacturer may have to undo some muscle memory to get used to different button placement. Similarly, a chemist might be using the same exact equipment in a new lab that they had gotten to know from working in a previous lab, but they'll need to make adjustments in this new context with a new set of constraints. As a software developer, I've seen firsthand how we can be expected to adapt without being properly briefed on context. For example, a developer starts a new team and they are expected to just pick up their first coding task because they were hired to do Python or do Node.js. But knowing a tool is not the same as being able to use it in a given context. It's not the same as automatically then being able to use it appropriately. And this is how I think the technical user can be dehumanized. So this conversation here is a fictionalized amalgamation of design time conversations that I've experienced in working in technical teams, building things for technical users. So in this fictionalized conversation, a team discussed how they would go about delivering a new API subscription feature for their organization's internal API gateway. And like many conversations I've experienced, technical jargon absolutely dominates. One developer stresses Terraform and a bit of config. The other talks about YAML and conf test. One references Terraform again, and this time mentions some pipeline. The other references YAML again, and one replies that Terraform is actually sufficient. And at the end, there's a sense of agreement. But the problem here is that alignment didn't actually happen. Neither developer is clear. Neither developer even talks about the developer users touch points. And this echoes that conversation from 1995 between those colleagues that were using the internet for the very first time. The shape of these two conversations is similar. The participants in both of the conversations are confident, but do not calibrate on the experience that's being described. In both conversations, language fails them. And in this one, the named technologies here, like conf test and Terraform, those things are being used as a proxy for user experience. So a reason why technical jargon might feel so useful to technical people is because they identify with their end user when that user is technical in the same way. And this is where naive realism kicks in. A developer's perception of the world is treated as like for like with their developer users' perception of the world. And when designing for the technical user, the thing to watch out for is this in-group mentality. And this in-group mentality reinforces technical jargon to stick. But the problem with this jargon is when it, on its own, simply isn't enough to convey the who and the what and the when. So what I've done here is sketch out a journey. And what this journey does is it articulates the what, the who, and the when, and connects those things down to those named technologies. I break up this journey into a series of steps and use natural language like fill out, validate, apply, consume, to help give a framing to what is being achieved. I call out the app developer as the persona being talked about, the persona that is being designed for, the persona that will be walking the steps along this journey. I also mention YAML and have a little icon for a source code management tool. This could be GitHub. And And I use those to help show what I mean in terms of the developer user's touch points at each of those steps or phases of the journey, right? To highlight what it is that the developer is interacting with, along with how or what they are accomplishing at each of those steps. Perhaps, though, it is a bit easier to do this for the interaction paradigms that already exist. There's not much new about using a bit of source control, using something like a YAML file, and triggering some pipelines in the background to get some things built or applied to a target environment. Going back to 1995 for a moment, the language that was not available to them feels very familiar now. And with these words, with these terms, we have a lot of familiarity with them and the shared experiences that go along with those words. And sure, language can take some time to catch up with emergent or novel interaction paradigms. So what to do if developing an emergent interaction paradigm and language is lacking? Even if language takes a bit of time to catch up, I think that the concepts that exist today aren't too far off from what's ahead in the future. So back in 1995, there were GUIs and terminals, the concept of a military network. And that wasn't actually a terribly leap to go from those things to this idea of a publicly accessible internet. What we have available today, like chatbots, type-aheads, motion capture, and decision APIs, these are not terribly far off, I imagine, for what's coming ahead in the future. So when a team is stuck on technical jargon, some of the things that may help are using natural language to supplement that jargon, right? I had used words like, or phrases like fill out and validate. You can also use journeys to be clear about the who, like the app developer, or sorry, personas. And then you can also use journeys to be clear about the what. So if these ideas resonated with you today, take them back to your team and start unpacking those hidden assumptions that are being made during those design time discussions. Thank you. Life in Code is the book that I referenced. Highly recommend. Great read, especially if you like nonfiction and reading a cultural commentary about the tech world. That's my QR code for my LinkedIn profile if anybody wants to connect. And then finally, on the left-hand side, there's that Slido QR code again.
Nice, another applause. Very nice. Very nice. Kind of like the QR code. I guess those are the things that you can say when you have the microphone. Anyway, very good, very good. I'm curious. Curious says. I don't know, I guess I'm curious. About the source of these leaked chats of mine, somebody asks, which I think they refer to very interesting chat lines. You got them from the book, the conversation, no? The conversation, you got them from the book, something come from your imagination, it's a real experience from your team. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they refer to that.
Real? Fictionalized. But so, very real to me.
Realish. Realish. There you go, Batman. All right, so another question. Jargon helps speed up conversations for those who know the meanings. Do you feel it's possible to get the same advantage without using jargon? Thank you.
To get the same advantage without using jargon. I think because of what happens when you have a team working together, there's this in-group, out-group boundary that gets created. So there's always going to be words or phrases that this in-group will lean on heavily as shortcuts that people outside of that group may not necessarily know. But it's okay because they have that context. So I'm definitely not against getting rid of jargon altogether, getting rid of these phrases that in groups can lean on as those shortcuts. What I suggest is just watching out for miscommunication that might happen when technical jargon is solely relied on, right? So in absence of these other words, more on the top half, right? If the conversations are all about the pipeline, the conf test, the Terraform, not everybody in that team may necessarily then be envisioning the same user experience. So hope that helps. I'm also happy to chat afterwards if anybody would like to.
I think it works.
Yeah.
I think it works. Have a couple more. How do you take your non-technical clients along this journey?
There is a journey? No. So I think it goes back to having conversations about these things. So it's one thing to sit down and articulate and think through these things and try to augment or enrich the technical jargon with these more abstracted or natural words. But I think it's really all about the conversations that visual aids like these then spark. So I think these should be used as conversation starters, and that could help, I think, elicit the questions that do need to be asked, those clarifying questions that need to be asked.
One last question related to this, I guess, but on the other side. Imagine you're a new team member. How can you encourage your team to try out these ideas? They may be stuck in jargon land.
That resonates with me. I think at this moment, I don't have a great answer for it. But yeah, definitely something to think about. Sometimes just doing it and trying it, like leading by example. Sometimes that works, and sometimes teams need a little bit more encouragement to really start adopting.
Maybe like this, no?
Those practices. Yeah.
And I have another one, but we run out of time. But I have this one with 3 votes, which I think it's fair to say. Fantastic topic and presentation, Laura. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.